When I coach people, I usually recommend take it slowly, take one note at a time, because it can feel intimidating, especially if you have amassed a lot of notes in the past. Just do things differently from now on. Look for a connection in the Zettelkasten and then put it there. So it feels less daunting. With the Zettelkasten, I like to believe it's more in the way Julian describes traditional Chinese philosophy, and that is that you do not start with a plan, but you build up potential. So you build up situation potential that, if it has been built up enough, it can tip a situation in your favor.
Right.
And you go with the momentum and you go with the energy you have been building up. And as the Zettelkasten, it has a built-in anti-confirmation bias, so to speak. There's certainly a better way to put it.
We're getting more and more meta here.
扶梯加速中，请握扶手，站稳踏梯。The escalator is speeding up. Please hold the handrail and stand forward.
嗨，我是 Jacky， 欢迎收听电扶梯走左边。让我们一起自我成长，离开舒适圈，做最好的自己，更好的我们。这一集我们邀请到卡片盒笔记 How to Take Smart Notes 的作者。德国社会科学家 Sönke Ahrens 来到我们的 podcast， 他这次是亲自来到台湾，然后他是一个哲学博士，然后他的这个卡片盒笔记系统呢，帮助很多很多的知识工作者啦、研究者、创作者可以去更清楚的思考。他说过 ，One cannot think without writing， 没有透过动笔动手去写出来的东西，你无法好好思考一个复杂的系统，然后用最简单的笔记去把复杂的系统拆解出来，让你可以重新组合，跟更深度的第一原则去了解。那我们讲到说这个系统怎么样保护你的思考，可以独立思考，不被 AI 的可能过度的偏见影响，让你自己有一套自己的独立思考的系统，保护你的思绪。那我问他说他对成功快乐爱的定义的时候，他提出了他在台北街头看到的一个很温馨的画面来回答这个问题，让我觉得那个最后是非常温馨的一个回答。那当然这集是全英文，所以大家如果想要看字幕的话，中文字幕可以到 YouTube 或是 Spotify。然后这次Sönke 特别来台湾，所以非常非常荣幸。那在节目开始之前，跟大家分享我们社群的一些快速。我们2月2号有一个淀粉的自我成长大家庭的每个月的自我成长主题的交流线上论坛，然后是我会跟大家导读一本书。那这次的书是《与成功有约》。那我们会有不同的问卷，让淀粉思考不同的问题，然后会分享这本书如何对我自我成长人生有很大很大的改变。然后最后会分组让淀粉们之间可以彼此交流，然后认识不同的淀粉，让我们自我成长的路上呢，不只是有一个方向，也有养分，当然也有淀粉们陪伴的伙伴。好，那感谢新加入的淀粉们，秋天、朵莉、U芬跟 Mike。那我们这周活动20号有个线上的医学领域的线上小聚，主题是慢性病预防跟自律神经失调到稳定，很有趣很棒的淀粉发起的活动，淀粉里也蛮多医生的，所以会有这样的活动，我觉得很有趣。22号有个实体的台北路跑，那23号呢有个线上的英文聊聊练习英文口说，那25号呢有个线上的阅读聊天室语音交流。希望大家喜欢这一集，然后有兴趣加入淀粉，跟我们一起自我成长。我们2026年有全新的企划，叫做淀粉的进化计划。我们相信今年会是我们成长最多，也是我们人生最好的一年。所以我们每个月都有不同的主题，我会花时间跟大家在线上讨论，也让大家跟淀粉之间有不同的连接。我们还做了自己的一个 podcast， 客制给淀粉们的 app， 所以现在自我成长的这个系统是越来越完整，跟越来越为淀粉们客制化。有兴趣欢迎加入我们，然后我们马上进入这一集精彩很棒的内容 ，Let's go。嗨，我是 Jacky， 欢迎收听电扶梯走左边，让我们一起自我成长，离开舒适圈，做最好自己，更好的我们。今天非常荣幸邀请到卡片的笔记的作家 Sönke Ahrens. Welcome, Sönke. Sönke is a German social scientist from Hamburg, and he has a doctorate in education and social science, and taught philosophy of education at German universities. And you've gone from academic writing to independent writing, also a systemic consultant, helping clients build better systems. Very curious about that. You wrote 2 books. Number one is experiment and exploration, forms of world disclosure, and how to take smart notes. The world famous book, we translated Zettelkasten into today's modern note-taking and thinking system for a lot of people around the world to be a better learner, have a better system, and just expand their knowledge and capture more insights. And you have a new course coming out in Taiwan, the Zettelkasten thinking method. And the Zettelkasten thinking technique, just to quickly touch base on that, originally came from Nicholas Newman, who said one cannot think without writing. And the system helps you gain true understanding of knowledge by thinking through, in your own words, enrich them by your experiences, and structure them in a way to help you think and create meaningful connections between topics. So it really helps you become very easy to intellectually discover new insights, organize your information, and without needing strict discipline or mundane memorization. And of course, we're going to have the author himself explain all of this to us in even better, even more detail. And maybe we can touch a little bit on core philosophy in the age of AI as well. So without further ado, welcome, Sönke.
Thank you for having me. Great pitch, by the way. I couldn't have put it better myself.
Is there anything you wanted to maybe add or,
No, I think it was really perfect. I mean, that's how I would describe the Zettelkasten.
Yeah? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Just for the audience to get to know you on a very high level, would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Curious, easily bored. I think that's 3 words.
Oh, wow. Okay. Curious and easily bored. Literally 3 words. I recall you actually spent some time in Asia living in Bangkok.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay.
But I truly enjoyed it. So I am always looked for a good excuse and reason to come back for a little bit more time.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this course. And they offered to shoot it in Hamburg.
No way.
But of course, if I want to, I could come to Taiwan. But obviously, I wanted to come to Taiwan.
Wow. We're so lucky to have you here.
Pleasure is all mine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome to Asia again. Let's talk a bit about your background. So how did you get into education and social science as your doctoral thesis?
I don't really remember. Sometimes things just happen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But my doctoral thesis was on my mind as a problem or question for a long time. And I kind of wrote about the problem of technology and education in my diploma thesis.
Right.
And that raised a lot of more questions, like how exactly is technology involved when we talk about thinking and learning. And I felt there's a huge disconnect. So people like to talk about these 2 things, but there is still a huge emphasis on our mind as the central organ, and everything is organized around it. So I read about philosophy and problems of representation, where the problem is discussed that we often think about writing as something that comes after thinking. So like the representation of our thoughts.
Right.
And that's, if you immerse yourself in Western philosophy, a big theme in the 20th century, and a form of reflection on the whole history of Western philosophy, beginning from Plato, who kind of made the first mistake, and then everything followed from that.
Oh.
And
sorry, what's the first mistake?
Well, exactly that. Believing that writing is the representation of thought, but not as good, really, because you can put way more things into a dialogue than you're able to put in writing. And that's only a bad copy of what you have in your mind. Right. And this is seen as like the ultimate thought. But if you look more closely, you realize all the thoughts we have in our mind are actually shaped by writing. And so putting writing more forward in the discussion changes a lot of things.
Right.
And that also changes the way we think about the influence of technology and our surroundings. And so that made me curious, obviously, about how we can set up our surroundings better to improve thinking. And so it resonates with the Zettelkasten. It's a different topic, of course. It's more of a practical application. But if you are interested and want to dive deeper into it, there is actually a whole philosophy underneath.
Oh, interesting. So you kind of started with philosophy and then you got into epistemology, like how to learn, be a better learner.
Yeah, I was especially curious about how you come up with something genuinely new, because there are no rules for coming up with something new, because it's kind of the definition of something genuinely new that it breaks with the traditional way of thinking. And philosophy struggles with something like that, where you can't follow through certain steps. But of course, you can think a lot about how to remove friction, how to set things up so it becomes more likely that something interesting can happen. And I also always was interested in practical applications. So when I read philosophy, I do have in my mind, okay, what does it actually mean for me in everyday life?
Right. I think philosophy is especially an interesting topic to kind of implement the system, because I feel like in philosophy, there's many instances of where different ideas are actually contradictions of each other. So to be able to visualize and organize those information and knowledge in very simple, one idea per card type of way really helps you break down a philosophy, a school of thought into many different ideas where you could potentially break it down and restructure, recompose a thought system, a thought school of your own. Right, taking inspiration from different places, different cards.
Yeah, I know we're not diving into the system right now, but you're striking a really good point. And that is something as simple as the rule that you only write one idea on one card seems like, okay, you can do that. But if you think more deeply about that, it means exactly what you described. We usually have muddled thought in our heads, and we don't really notice they are muddled. But the moment we force ourselves to decompose them or deconstruct them and think, okay, what kind of elements are here at play, and write them down, you gain clarity, and you realize where the gaps in your understandings are, because you now see in writing, okay, this is my argument here, and this makes sense, then there's something happening I haven't really described. And then here's the conclusion. But you need often to see your thinking before you realize where it's flawed and problematic. And then what you also said, it enables you to shuffle ideas around and build something new out of them, maybe integrate an idea from a completely other topic you worked on. And so it makes the whole thinking process a little bit more playful. Like you have building blocks, you can build something new out of them.
It's sort of forcing yourself to think in first principles, right? Because you have to break it down to the most fundamental first principle before you reconstruct them.
Yeah, I think that's a good mental model to use.
So is that kind of how you discovered, Nicholas Wilhelm's work when you were studying philosophy? Did you have a pain point you were trying to solve? I know you were in awe of how many, he wrote like 70 books, 400 papers, his productivity, and kind of, I guess, were you like just in awe of like, wow, he did so much, how can I do that? Or did you have a pain point in, as you're studying philosophy, like, wow, there's so many different ideas, how do I?
Yeah, good question. I didn't start with being impressed by his quantity of work. He addressed a problem I thought about as a student a lot, and that's kind of the basic sociological problem, and that is, okay, we're like 8 billion people on the earth, and we go to work every day, and everything works pretty well. I mean, there are a lot of things that go wrong, but when you consider how difficult it is to organize like 5 people in your family to go on a trip, you realize what a remarkable thing it is that so many things go right every day on this planet without having one person coordinating and telling you what to do. So everyone just acts like ants and follow their own ideas and follow their own desires and career path. And in the end, it works surprisingly well. And no one really understands it. That's the most interesting part of it. So there's a field, sociology, who's trying to figure out how it works, even though it's completely based on human interaction. And that goes so much against our idea of we have to understand first how things work to make it work. And now we have something that works pretty well, but nobody really understands it because it's so complex. So complexity is really his theme, and that is what systems theory kind of answers, and where it resonates with evolution theory and how things build up without the need of having some central organization that has everything inside. That was my pain point, trying to understand that.
Complex systems.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So it wasn't even about philosophy. It was understanding complex systems. And
it has a lot of philosophical implications, of course. Sure. And you see the limitations of philosophy, and where other forms of knowledge production has the right. And Luhmann seems to have an answer. But in the back of my head, I always thought it's too good, it's too neat, and something is missing.
Really?
And
too good to be true?
I think I thought, well, when I wrote my doctoral thesis, I want to figure it out what that is, what's nagging, and what I wanted to, not like here is why he's wrong, but here's maybe the part he couldn't get any further. So that brought me to his theory, and then of course you discover, well, he's writing faster than you can read. So what's that about?
Right.
And most people just said, well, he's a genius, so we don't have to think about how he's doing that.
Right.
But when you ask him, he always said, well, I'm not doing it alone. It's all collaboration work with my Zettelkasten. Not his assistant, not AI, just
not yet.
a certain way of taking notes.
Right. And has that helped you a lot as you transition from academia to more independent writing? Did you have that system when you were in academia, or was that kind of later on?
Yeah, I kind of started it with my dissertation, with my doctoral thesis, but not so much to be incredibly productive, but to manage to get anything on paper. Because I struggle a lot with writer's block and being anxious about having the perfect idea before I can write it down. And the Zettelkasten allows you to just write a note and then add the note to something, and almost automatically, something builds up.
Right. I think the way we're describing almost automatically, it makes it sound very simple. But in my mind, I'm thinking it's actually, Richard Feynman liked to say, right? It's really hard to break down complex ideas into simple ideas.
Yes.
Because that requires thorough, true understanding to be able to do that. So when you say it is, in theory, it sounds very automatic and easy. But when you're reading a book, you're processing this idea. Yeah. How do you actually break that down into that simple form? Is actually not simple, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I think the fun is in thinking that, like Warren Buffett often says, investing is, it's all very, very simple.
Supposedly, yes.
You buy something that's cheap and you sell it when it's expensive.
Right.
I mean, couldn't get simpler than that.
Right.
But it's not easy to do.
Exactly.
And you can't make shortcuts. That's probably the thing. If you have a muddled thought and try to have a shortcut to write about that, it will be a muddled outcome. So you have to go through the process of understanding, deconstruction, reconstruction. Right. Yeah. Simple, but not easy.
Ooh, I like that. Simple, but not easy. Yeah. I realized you quoted Richard Feynman a lot in your book. I noticed that. I thought that was very interesting. Was he like a big inspiration of yours in many ways?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I briefly studied physics. Then I went on a different path. But when you read his biographies, first of all, I think they're fun. And secondly, he stresses understanding so much. And he really points out the problems with at least the Western education system, where it's a lot about knowing names for something instead of understanding how things work, or being able to regurgitate what you've heard, and the old teaching for the test problem. And I mean, the Nobel Prize he got for formulas which are really unusual. because they are so idiosyncratic, and they kind of made sense to him. And it was only possible because he didn't care too much about tradition. And this emphasis on understanding and how he talks about his father teaching him. I mean, you probably know this story. I've been reminded of when I walked through a park here in Taipei yesterday with all the bird watchers. And he was at school one day, and he pointed out a bird to his fellow classmate, and he said, "Well, do you know how the bird is called?" And he said, well, embarrassingly, "No, I don't." Came home to his father and said, "Well, it was a bit embarrassing. You didn't teach me anything. I don't even know what the bird is called. And now I'm embarrassed in front of my schoolmates." And the father just said, "Well, in English, the bird is called that. In Japanese, that. In Korean, that. You can have all the names remembered of the bird in all languages. And you wouldn't know a thing about the bird itself. Only what people call it.
Right.
So let's see what the bird does. What kind of nest is he building, and why, and how does it look like?" And so, again, it's a simple thing, but when you spend an hour in a classroom, you realize if you take an idea like that seriously, it would make a huge difference.
Right. Yeah. Were you referring to his memoir, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman?
Yeah. What is your best take from it? So
from the book?
So what you took from it that stayed with you?
I think just his pure joy of learning and experiencing life. For example, like he was like kind of picking locks. Right. That was really funny. In a very serious environment. He just didn't care. He just wanted to have fun. And then when he was learning the drums, when he painted in all these weird places and joined the band, just like completely immerse himself in any new experiences and learning. And not for like, not for status, not for money, just for the pure joy and curiosity of learning. I think that's really what inspired me a lot when I aspire to be like. But also, I think a lot of the academics, when they reference Richard Feynman, they talk about like the Feynman technique, right? How the way he says, like, to truly understand the topic, you have to be able to explain to a 5-year-old. And I think a lot of people resonate with that, and people use that in interviews and whatnot. So I think just the way he thinks about ideas, the way he really is able to break things down, very complex physics into simple 6 easy pieces. That's why, I'm referencing him kind of to bring it back to the system of like, simple ideas are not easy, but they're very useful and fundamental building blocks of any knowledge base.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think that sometimes people misunderstand the Feynman technique.
Oh yeah? Please.
And think, if someone can explain something to me, like to a 5-year-old,
right,
I understood it. Like if Feynman explained physics to me, what he's explaining to me as someone who has no idea is not the same as he would talk to a colleague. Right. And I think some people mistake, I understand that simple explanation, and so it's as good as the complex explanation he would give to a colleague. But he describes it from the standpoint of the teacher, of being able to break it down so you can adjust your teaching to different levels of understanding.
Got it.
And you have that problem in philosophy sometimes, that you want to challenge students with texts or literature they don't yet understand. Right. And then they heard about the Feynman technique. Say, well, why can't the author talk to me like a 5-year-old? And well, no, that's a misunderstanding. Sorry, you have to push yourself a little bit. You don't want to stay at the 5-year-old level.
Right. So are you kind of saying that, for example, like the Occam razor, right? The simplest idea is usually right. I guess it's maybe two different things. But when you explain something in a really simple way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way. It's just the most simple form. There are more advanced levels of complexity, understanding.
Exactly.
You can't explain everything to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when you look at it from a teaching perspective, then it's the actual correct framework. Good to know. I think I fall into the camp of like having this misunderstanding of it as well. So thank you for that.
I don't think that's true, but
speaking of books, I wonder if it's okay we,
sure,
talk about books a little bit. You've written 2 books. I want to ask you about how your 2 books connect with each other. But before that, I want to ask if it's possible that you can maybe give me a few books that changed your life, had the most impact on your life.
I thought about that, and actually 2 movies or 2 movie directors came to mind. So it's not books, it's movies. Because movies taught me a lot. I couldn't learn from books, I think.
Wow.
And then 2 books came to mind.
Okay.
One is probably not very interesting for your audience because it just was the last missing piece from my doctoral thesis. And it came from an unexpected source. So I've written about philosophy of education, and then I somehow read a history book on the development of synthesizing proteins in the test tube.
Very niche.
And suddenly everything made sense. And
wow.
For me, that I remember sitting in a car and I had a thought, parked the car and spent 2 hours just continue reading.
Wow. Because,
that's probably what the saying is. So inspiration comes to prepared minds or something like that. That's same with books. So if you think a lot about something and you feel stuck and then the right book comes along, it can suddenly change everything and pieces fall into places. And I like these moments. But let's not get into the details of synthesizing proteins in the test tube.
Well, it does sound interesting, but maybe a different day. Okay, so that's one of the books. You said there's another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was reminded of that during a discussion with one of the team members of who I'm shooting the course with.
Yes.
And when they discussed something in Chinese I couldn't understand, and I thought, okay, it's about my way of phrasing something or the lighting from the camera and stuff like that going wrong. But actually, they were discussing the contents and thinking about, how would I add this idea I read yesterday in my Zettelkasten? And so they were starting to think in Zettelkasten terms. And so a colleague read about Chinese philosophy and Western philosophy and how to combine these things. And she had this idea, I could put that together because there is a resonance here. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I immediately made a connection in my mental Zettelkasten with a book that taught me a little bit about the difference between Western and Chinese philosophy. And that's from a French philosopher, sinologist, François Julian.
Okay.
And he wrote a book on silent transformations.
Silent transformation.
And I hope you have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I need to
yes.
dive into that.
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it. I can't wait.
Because when I read or read Luhmann, or when I read this book on synthesizing proteins in the test tube, you had this immediate insight where you feel, okay, like a flash of light. You now suddenly know how things work. And then I read Julian's Silent Transformation book. And I read it, and he described how Western philosophy is usually obsessed with definitions and the intrinsic value of things, and Chinese philosophy always was more interested in transformations. So modeled after the change of seasons. And someone like Plato would say, summer is defined by a lot of sun and autumn is defined by harvest, something like that. And in Chinese thought, as he describes it, I don't know if that's true, but as he describes it, it's more, spring is slowly less winter and increasingly more summer. And summer is slowly retreat of the spring, but autumn is coming up. So there's this emphasis on change. It becomes funny when you look at Western philosophy texts where they try to define melting snow. So, and discuss for hours and hours and hours. Well, is it still water?
This is the same boat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Theseus boat. So is it the same? By the way, the Wikipedia page on it's Theseus ship, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So the Wikipedia page on Theseus ship has changed so much that not a single word is still the same.
Is it the same page then?
Yeah, it's still the same page, I believe. But you can discuss that.
That's such a funny example.
Yeah.
It's very meta.
It's very meta. Yes. But it's also, I think it's deep somehow.
Oh, yeah. It's spot on, yeah.
Yeah, so I read this silent transformation book and I thought, well, yeah, it's interesting. But it's not like this insight I have with other books.
Yeah.
And I put it away. Then I realized, well, it kind of stayed with me because I started to see where in the text I read or in philosophy books I read, problems are discussed that only exist because they are unable to think transformations, slow transformations, because they are still looking for definitions and the distinguishing features between this and that. And I realized I'm not interested in that kind of discussion anymore. There are other problems that are much more interesting. And it took me another read of other books by him that I, in hindsight, realized, oh, the whole time I was expecting an insight like, oh, now I get it. Oh. And I didn't realize that reading the book is the prime example of a silent transformation that happened in the month, maybe even years after having read the book.
So interesting.
So I thought, yeah, okay, this is interesting because it's really experiential. It's not just to read something and you can check the box and now I understand this. It's sometimes things happen inside your mind, in your perception of things, without you realizing they are happening. Right. It only later that it comes as an insight. Right. And that, again, relates to the Zettelkasten because you write your individual notes and you add to that and you add to that and you don't necessarily realize what you're actually working on because you didn't make a plan with a clear outcome. You can do that as well, of course. But the interesting things often happen on the side. Right. And then after a year or something, you see, well, I accumulated quite a lot of nodes in this cluster. I haven't even realized that I kept coming back to it. And then you can take that cluster, think, okay, what kind of question am I discussing here? Maybe I want to write about that. First of all, it's probably more interesting than what you initially thought it's interesting. And secondly, you have all the material to work with.
Yes. It's not a blank page.
Yeah, there's a connection there.
That is beautiful how you connected one of your favorite books, Eastern, Western philosophy, transformation, back to Zettelkasten, and it all ties in so nicely. Yeah, wow. That was beautiful. Yeah, I love how you connected the different dots.
Thank you.
That way.
Couldn't have done it without the Zettelkasten.
I see. You mentioned you have a mental Zettelkasten, and right, so there's just like two copies of it essentially. One in the more abstract, high level. Perhaps.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm not sure it has been raised in any other interviews before. Sometimes people talk about the Zettelkasten as a second brain.
Yes.
Like it's a copy of your mind. Right. But it's not.
Exactly.
It's a dialogue partner you're collaborating with. You only write down where you feel you need to discuss it. So it's like a colleague you work with every day for years. So you kind of know each other's thoughts. So you don't have to do a full text search every time you go into that. It's more internalized filter. So when I read something, just without doing that intentionally, in the back of my mind comes, that disconnect to that, or disconnect to that. And that helps with filtering stuff a lot.
Yeah. Wow. I like how you said when it happens in the silence, because when you're doing these notes, essentially the system's taking care of all that transformation for you, and while you're just kind of dumping simple ideas one at a time. And over time, the system starts to build up this, a lot of this context, right? So then when you have this mental Zettelkasten, it's more of the high level, the mental models, and you can dive deeper with this colleague of yours to have this dialogue and have all the context kind of built in.
Yeah, exactly.
They're ready for you. So
I think that is also something I got interested in because I read about history of science and history of laboratories, because there too is a difference between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing.
Oh, tell me more.
And when you look at theories of scientific development, you often have neat theories.
Okay. Yes.
And there was a big change in the mid-20th century that people got more interested in empirical work on scientific developments and started to analyze the logbooks, the notebooks of laboratory work, and to be able to see the development of a thought. And that is usually very different to the way scientists describe the process of discovery in hindsight. Because in hindsight, you think, yeah, I did this and I did that, and then I put two things together. And in the logbook, it's more, well, something didn't work here. This didn't work. It keeps coming up with this error. Yeah. And the error is, of course, later the discovery. Yes. But they try to get rid of it, and they just couldn't. And it went on a path that is almost independent from what's going on in their head. But it's all going on in the machinery of the laboratory and in the logbooks. And yeah, and I think it's similar to the Zettelkasten, where you think on your path, but there is a tension sometimes, and things build up in unexpected ways. Yeah. And then you realize, oh, okay, now I see that it's different. And you need this externalizing to have the chance to develop thoughts in unexpected ways.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. But I think it's really interesting because we talked about having the second brain, what some people would say. And this is actually further down what I had in mind to discuss, but I could pull this up a little bit sooner because I think this is very fascinating. I have a lot of friends, people I work with, and they love to use AI. And sometimes I hate it because I'm like, bro, you're not even thinking. You're just like outsourcing the thinking and you're not even like internalizing it. And then the stuff that comes out looks like, yeah, I can tell like AI wrote that because it's not refined, it's not nuanced. It doesn't address a lot of complex systems. And like you mentioned earlier, how like spontaneous idea comes up. And I think like when you actually manually think through and organize information, it helps a lot to actually build the muscle to connect different dots. And that's where a lot of the inspiration, the ideas across different disciplines come together and form something unique. Yeah. So in the Zettelkasten system, right, like, is there like a balance of like, okay, I want to outsource this, I want to externalize it, but also I want to, what parts do I keep in my mind that's the most important, and what part do I kind of leverage the system?
Yeah, it's a question that comes up a lot. Okay. And I think generally I have the same idea when you need to build a muscle for your own thinking. And there are two ways of using AI, and that is either you leverage what you have, or you hand it over to AI. Yeah. And I think the problem with handing it over or giving in to the temptation of handing it over has a lot to do with a wrong mental model of how thinking works. Because it's seemingly paradoxically still put too much emphasis on the brain, and the mind. Because you think, well, I let AI write my text. I can still judge it. I can still go over it and do that. But you're just reacting on a point-to-point basis. So AI gives you something, you react to it from what you have in your mind. And that puts a lot of pressure on the ability of your mind to edit, correct, proofread, fact check, and do all these things. The Zettelkasten is a system from the pre-digital era, but it curiously, I think, has an answer to the challenges, as it is a truly personal support system where you don't rely on your brain alone to face the information flow coming in from the internet and AI, because you accumulated notes of facts and ideas you truly understand to be able to put in your own words over a lifetime, over, in the beginning, just days, then weeks, then months, then years, but in the end, as a lifelong companion. And when you then read an AI-generated text, you have way more than just your brain and what it can hold in this very moment to judge what's coming in. You can look in your Zettelkasten, okay, how does this connect? Oh, and then you discover there's actually something I've written down that contradicts it. You have forgotten it because our brain can't hold that many information pieces at the same time. So I feel it's a huge support system to stay grounded in your own thinking, and the temptation to hand things over to AI is greatly reduced. Right. And then, of course, it is what you said about building the muscle. No? If you're just handing things over to AI, it's really like you're going to the gym and found a hack on letting the machines work on themselves. And you probably feel good about that the first days when you can show off to your fellow gym members that you can lift so much more. But you probably look pretty stupid after a month or a year.
No gains.
You have no gains. And so what the Zettelkasten can do there is it kind of forces you through the difficulties of thinking, because there's one golden rule I have, and that is the permanent notes, which are the building blocks of it all, have to be written by yourself.
Yes.
You can filter a lot. You don't have to write everything down, only a small amount of information. But what you decide to write down is something you have to write in your own words.
Yes.
So you can be sure that you only accumulate stuff you're able to explain in your own words, and thereby building up like a counterweight to all the information coming in.
Right. I want to make this connection to AI, which I think is actually very interesting. I have an engineering background, so I look into how AI works, right? You have these different nodes of data, text, and then these transformers are built. So then whenever you ask ChatGPT a question, it's essentially trying to predict, it's a prediction machine of what will come out next. So in some ways, the Zettelkasten system is kind of like a human AI, where you're putting small information nodes, spreading it across the entire knowledge graph. And what AI is doing is essentially at a more granular and at a bigger scale, a faster level. But the kind of fundamental structure of it is very similar, right? You're dumping small data into this graph, and then they're somehow interconnected. And when you ask AI questions, they're able to come out with all this stuff because they're able to really quickly transform the information through different nodes and kind of parse through the entire graphs of knowledge and be able to pull out things that, okay, this is really, and then boom, give you something that's like seemingly thought through, right? But maybe on a human level, that's kind of what we're doing too, right? With the Zettelkasten system. That's kind of interesting.
I think, yes, I mean, there are similarities, but I think the differences are pretty striking as well. That's what you mentioned. I mean, on a completely different scale. And the connections you make yourself. So you make connections because you realize there is a connection. And it's not just prediction or association that here could be something interesting. It's more, you have two pieces of information and you have to make a decision. This is connected because, and then
because
you make explicit how two things are connected. And that means your connection are built on reasoning. They are not built on association alone.
Yes, I love that.
So in many ways, it's inferior because it's just your tiny human brain, our tiny human brains, and the limited amount of time we have to distill information. That's very, very small compared to what an LLM can do. But it's the only system that's completely revolve around your own thoughts.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So my favorite part of this is distilling information and writing it in your own words. Back in the day when I read, I used to just highlight everything by highlighter. And after I read a book, I would go back and retype out all the highlights into a note, like Evernote. And then I'll have all the notes kind of listed, just the raw text. And then I'll write out a paragraph like, okay, in my own words, what did I just read? What did I just learn? And very recently, I gone through this exercise of trying to move my entire knowledge base of Notion, Evernote, everything onto the Zettelkasten system. It was hard. It was hard to do. And I catch myself like still in that old, like my own framework of like, okay, one notebook should be one book. And then, right, instead of, like you said, breaking ideas down. And I noticed like when I go through all my reading notes, when I'm doing that migration, that the ones where I was disciplined enough to write it in my own words, I read it and I immediately pick up right where I left off. Been 10 years. And I'm like, bam, that is still internalized. And when I read it, I'm like, okay, I'm like reading my own mind. Yeah. But when there's a book where I'm just like, okay, I wrote the notes down. I'm just kind of, okay, on to the next. I'm like, what is this? Did I read this? Did I write this? Right? Like it's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is a huge difference. And there's research on that and very clear data that shows that is exactly the effort that makes a difference. That's the difference between going to the gym and sitting on a machine or actually lifting a weight.
I love that.
So it's what researchers call desirable difficulty.
Oh.
By the way, I'm impressed by your migration. I wouldn't recommend doing this whole one big migration thing. So when I coach people, I usually recommend take it slowly, take one note at a time, because it can feel intimidating, especially if you have amassed a lot of notes in the past. Yeah. Just do things differently from now on, and only add to your new system when you take a note in your hand anyway. So if you look things up as you usually do, just sort it differently. Right. So don't put it back in the old place. Look for a connection in the Zettelkasten and then put it there. So it feels less daunting. Yeah. Don't want to put off the audience.
Yes. I know you mentioned learn how to process own notes, not just move them, right? So yes, indeed. And that migration failed horribly because I ended up just moving things into I just moved it to a different software.
It somehow has to go through your mind where you make a decision on how it brings a thought forward you're working on, or how it could answer partly a question you have on your mind.
I thought it was really interesting. You said the desirable difficulty. I think that's really cool. And to think about the books that I did write my thoughts in my own words, maybe I spent 40 minutes writing the notes and just 5 minutes doing that. And that 5 minutes was 100 times more productive than that 40 minutes. Of course, you needed both, right? But the point is that like it only takes so little time for you to kind of just take a moment to internalize it. And then that becomes such a core, stronger memory point, stronger note.
Yeah. It's like a small form of teaching, right?
Oh.
So, I mean, that's what Feynman always talks about. That you need to teach a topic to understand it properly, or to realize if you understood it properly. And I feel writing in my own words, it is like a daily practice of small teaching myself, though.
Yeah. For a fun thought experiment, what if one day someone took your hard drive on the server and just completely deleted everything you have in your system's ecosystem? just a thought, and you now lost everything you ever built in that system. But you still have your mental Zettelkasten system. How would you then rebuild it? Or would you feel handicapped? Or are the mental models in your brain strong enough where like, okay, you can let go of the details, but you still have the big ideas?
Well, it would be a loss, certainly.
For sure.
But I think I would approach it step by step. I wouldn't try to rebuild it from the ground up.
Okay.
I think I would take it as a chance to take a step back and think, okay, what do I want to let go of? What questions do I not want to continue working on? And then the things I've decided to work on, I think I would start with just a few notes trying to explain my current understanding.
Okay.
So what's my best understanding of the topic right now? And use these notes as like the first branches of a tree. I can then hang more leaves onto it and expand on that, maybe branch out. But the idea is that when I encounter new information, it hopefully makes a difference to what I think about a topic currently. So I'm hoping for contradictions, or I'm hoping for problems, because they drive the Zettelkasten, they drive writing new notes. Because when there is a contradiction, you need to think how to resolve it, or realize that you were thinking about two different things. They just seem similar. So these are good problems to have.
Right.
If it's just a confirmation of what you already have, it's not even worth writing down.
So it helps you discover conflicts as well.
Yeah, I think it's difference. Let's call it difference driven. Yeah.
Okay.
Very different to the mind, which is driven by pattern recognition, similarities, confirmation.
Right.
You hear something, you feel, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Usually because that's exactly how you thought about it.
Right, the confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Okay. Now with the system, and this is me playing devil's advocate to want to challenge it a little bit, is there a world where, or a potential where, because we have such a strong system, Zettelkasten, that it actually puts us in a box where our thinking is now in this structure, and it's really easy for it to kind of feed us back, like a colleague that knows us really well, that feed us back information that we were looking for, right? You're looking for that. That's why you found that. But does that keep that in a box where, hey, is it maybe harder to find inspiration and new discoveries with different ideas because of the system? Is there any potential, or?
I think the risk is always there. And in a literal sense, when you go with the analog Zettelkasten, you are thinking in a box.
Yes.
You're not thinking outside of it. You literally put yourself into it.
Yeah.
So part is maybe a certain stance towards it, a certain way of approaching it.
Yeah.
But I do feel there is a built-in counterweight to confirmation bias.
Oh, yeah?
Because the alternative is, and that kind of goes back to Julian, because he's written a book about the Western tendency to make plans and then see how to follow them through.
Yeah.
When you start with a plan and you gain insight on your path, the insight kind of messes with your plan.
Yes.
So there's a trade-off between being productive, meaning sticking with your plan, getting quickly to output, or following insight, which messes with your plan, brings you back to square one. You have to rewrite the plan. So there's a tension between productivity and insight. With the Zettelkasten, I like to believe it's more in the way Julian describes traditional Chinese philosophy, and that is that you do not start with a plan, but you build up potential. So you build up situation potential that, if it has been built up enough, it can tip a situation in your favor,
Right.
And you go with the momentum and you go with the energy you have been building up. Okay. And as the Zettelkasten, now it's a bit metaphorically, but if you want to be productive with the Zettelkasten, you want to write new notes. And if you, what drives note-taking are problems, are contradictions, are things that do not fit because you have to explain on new notes. If it's a confirmation, it's almost not worth writing down because you just have another note which says basically the same thing. It doesn't gain momentum. So there's a built-in tendency to attract more counterintuitive, challenging ideas and thoughts, so that when I discover a problem now, it's almost like, oh, there are a lot of notes I can write about that. Because even if I'm only able to state the problem, I feel I'm making progress because I've written 5 notes on explaining why things that look similar are actually different. And that can go into an article or lecture, or can explain to someone the problem itself, and then you can think together about a solution.
Right.
So I do feel there is a difference, and it has a built-in anti-confirmation bias, so to speak. There's certainly a better way to put it.
We're getting more and more meta here. I love that. Yeah. So in a way, it's almost
like a disconfirmation bias is maybe a better word.
Bias. Yeah. That's a new word. Maybe we can coin that today. Is it a new word? Disconfirmation bias. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Check with AI.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you say that you're kind of setting up the situation instead of making a plan. It's sort of like when you play chess, right? You're not.
I think it's more like playing Go.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe chess is more thinking ahead, and Go is more building potential.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So it sounds like you've spent some time studying Eastern philosophy as well. Has your thinking it sounds like you maybe transformed a little bit from studying a lot of Western to Eastern. Is there kind of a process there, or?
Yeah, I don't think I'm an expert in any way, but I was always interested in the limitations of our current understanding. Yeah. So I approached the problems with Western philosophy in the beginning more from an internal standpoint. I was interested in people who try to push the borders and make explicit what only implicit limitations of our thinking were. So we take a lot of things for granted. We don't speak explicitly about, like in the metaphor with a fish in the water, you don't know anything about water. To make yourself aware of the water and to make yourself aware of all the things you take so much for granted. You're not even aware, you don't even have words for them. Like I said in the beginning, with the complexity of modern society, we kind of take it for granted, but it's something to be curious about. How does it work that we sit here and there are so many things working at the same time to make that possible? And the problem is Western thinking is so ubiquitous. Psychology is also a lot about, when you talk about biases, before having words for them, we weren't maybe not really aware of them. And being aware of your own confirmation bias is a way of becoming aware of limitations of your own mind through reflection and hopefully being less prone to it.
Let's come back to that. Is there the movies that you learned?
Oh, right. Well, 2 directors came to mind. One is Japanese director Koreeda.
Oh, okay.
And the other one is from Iran, Abbas Kiarostami.
Yes.
And both taught me to take everyday life more seriously.
More seriously?
And I think when you look at the movies, first you are so used to a lot of things happening on the screen that you feel there is something lacking until you change your perception, until you learn to look in the way they teach you looking. at everyday life, at mundane situations. And you realize talking about ethics, for example, is often so detached from real life that you can answer moral questions or ethical questions really only if you be very attentive to a situation, to the ambiguity, to the complexity of a person's life, and they approach their subjects with curiosity. They don't judge. They don't have a plan or an idea or a thesis they want to prove. They just take the people they show so seriously in their flaws, in their beauty, in their everyday actions that you learn to look differently. So I think understanding happiness, understanding love, and understanding ethics has so much to do with a certain way of looking. And that's what these movies, I think, taught me. And I noticed that when I walked the streets of Taipei yesterday and thought about possible questions like that. And I saw an old couple which was just tender to each other.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's kind of role model. I mean, I don't need grand gestures, or it would silly to ask them what's the greatest thing in your life, because in this moment there was so much. I thought, I think that growing up like that together, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Or a guy who worked at a car wash and was so immersed in his work.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if enjoyment is the right word, but there was a kind of mastery to it, because, he was focused on removing the stains and was pleased with a finished job well done. So that is what these movies look like. Situations that look mundane, you tend to glance over, but you become more attentive to them. And suddenly questions like, what's success, what is love, what is ethical behavior, are rooted in these everyday situations. And you think it's more true to the life we lead. And it's not an escape, but it brings us into life itself.
So I get the sense that you've kind of moved on from definitions and you're more into the actual, the moment, the experience, rather than like the definition and the type of things, right? Like
becoming better in observation, being more open to understanding what's going on. Definitions tend to put something up front.
Yeah.
It's like the bed of Procrustes, I think, in Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Everything that doesn't fit is being cut off.
Yeah. The bed,
Yeah. So definitions are obviously very helpful in research, but they usually come at the end.
Right.
You can come up with a good definition if you have done the work before, but the work you need to do has so much to do with being attentive, taking in what you have missed before. And in the end, there's definition work to do, but don't start with it.
Yeah. This reminds me of the idea that a lot of times people get stuck in finding the right answers. But a lot of times what's more important is finding the right questions, the right problems.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so like what you said, like seeing the car mechanic, the person washing the car, or the old couple in Taipei tender to each other. And if we were to go up to them and be like, what I'm doing now, like, hey, what is your definition of success? How do you see yourself, success change for you over the next few years? What is your highlight? What is your low light? That's completely pointless. Because at that moment, everything's perfect. And we have no business of, interrupting their flow, what they're doing. So like actually asking the right question, a lot of times is more important than finding the right answers, because answers change. But when you have, I guess answers can change over time, but when you know what the right question to ask is, then it helps you start thinking about what's the right answer for this moment.
Yeah, questions. And
would you agree with questions more important than answers?
I totally agree. I think a lot of work in teaching in higher education is about teaching asking better questions.
Yeah. How do you ask better questions if we go there?
Probably you need to immerse yourself into a topic to understand what the question is.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know if you know Cheryl Strait, who's written Wild.
He wrote it on the notebook, right? That one?
Yeah, on a long hike.
Yeah.
So you were hiking in the US a lot as well, right?
Yes. Wow, I'm surprised you know that.
So I don't remember the trail she was on, but it's one of the famous trails.
In California, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, before she's written the book, she was writing anonymously a column, like a self-help column, answering readers' question on a little obscure literature blog. And I loved it. Didn't know who she was,
Really?
but every answer was a little piece of literature. The questions were all over the place, and one of the questions was just WTF. and instead of just dismissing the question, she wrote a piece of literature on drug abuse, on a growth path, on all these kinds of difficulties that might resonate with someone who's asking that kind of
Someone
question.
should ask WTF. That was the question. Okay, wow.
And so it's more about the WTF of life. So and in the end, the last sentence was, "Sweet pea, learn asking better questions."
I love that. Oh man, have you read the book The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I got 3 copies because people keep
Really?
gifting it to me, but no, I still haven't read it. Yeah.
Okay, you weren't that interested, or it didn't really catch your...
I don't know, it's probably one of the books I pick up someday and thought, well, why haven't I read it earlier? Might be.
Yeah, because part of it mentions about like the mechanic going through a motorcycle and looking for what's wrong, and just that complete immersiveness, complete flow and focus on the work you're working on is the difference between a mechanic finding the issue and someone who just kind of going through the SOP. He says, like, you know, when you work on a machine, you kind of build your personal problems into it as well. Any product you build. And I'm going to tie this back to the system. I think is very interesting. As you're kind of working through the system or the different systems you have, anything you do you get that similar feeling of like complete immersiveness into finding the right questions, finding the connections, finding the insights, writing the best simple notes?
Not enough.
Really?
Not enough. I know that feeling, and that's because I also realize when it's missing for too long. I do get that sometimes when I'm in the Zettelkasten and I feel one idea sparks another and a question raises another question. I get that with teaching sometimes, but there is an envy for people who have a job where you get that on a regular basis. And I feel it's more likely when you have a mastery on something you craft, where you work with material. And
interesting.
I think that Zettelkasten is for me a little bit like putting a little bit craftiness into intellectual work. Would be a reason actually to use pen and paper more. Because there is something to it. It's more immersive if you have surroundings you interact with than just the computer screen. So it's a good reminder to use more analog systems actually.
Someone told me, I think this might be Jeff Bezos, his idea that in meetings, he implements something where no one's allowed to use PowerPoints.
Right.
I'm not sure if you heard of the story. He forced everyone to explain anything they want to explain on a whiteboard.
Right.
Because he said, if you can't explain on a whiteboard, you don't understand it.
It's funny. It's often Silicon Valley guys who are most prone to use analog devices.
Exactly. Yeah. I think this thing is interesting. Bill Gates, he does this thing called Think Weeks. I'm sure if you're maybe probably heard of that, right?
Where he carries his bags full of books.
Goes to the mountains for 2 weeks and just thinks and writes. I tried doing this. I went to a cabin for a week and actually brought all my reading notes. And during that week, I'm like, okay, this is the time I'm going to migrate. How silly. All my notes into this Zettelkasten system and just kind of spend time thinking and reading through all my notes. I don't think the migration was that successful, but I think the process of going back through my notes of 10, 15 years, my journals, and reading the words I written, my own words, was very helpful for me to kind of refactor and restructure, reorganize. Kind of like when you clean your house, you take out the drawer, dump everything out, clean it, and put it back in. Do you go through similar exercises like Bill Gates, or like, you know, given that you have this kind of very structured sound system, how often do you like kind of clean house, maintain it, and like, or just, hey, let's put the system aside, then we go into the mountains, the woods, and just sit there, or go into Vipassana and just sit there and think for like a week?
I don't have these weeks, but that's maybe because my everyday work is surrounded around books, reading and writing. And I don't do the big cleanups, but I do them on a smaller scale on a regular basis. So I know this feeling of you need sometimes to clean things up. And it can just be the desk, or in my Zettelkasten I have like an overview page where I give myself an overview over entry points in different topics I'm working on. And that is where I sometimes take a step back and think, well, do I actually want to continue working on that? Or are there new problems I want to work on? And I can change on the starting page the entry points. So it keeps refreshing. Whenever I feel I'm a bit stuck or I want to have a fresh mind, I would change that. The good thing is it doesn't change anything on the underlying structure. So no notes are being deleted.
Ever?
No, ever.
Never. You've never deleted a note?
From the prominent notes section, never.
Oh, got it.
Wouldn't make any sense. But that's why you need to separate them from others, because when you write a fleeting note like just a reminder of birthday or to pick something up, you don't want to keep that forever. It would just mess up with your system.
One question I had is, are the permanent notes permanent? So technically, they're supposed to be, right? But also, could they change, and could you go back and can they contradict each other at some point? What do you do then?
I usually would just add a note.
Okay.
But I would add it in a way that I see that there is a contradicting note. So I would add something on an existing note, like just a hint, like all wrong, see next note.
Okay. So you track that evolution of the
but I track the evolution, and I feel if you write, or especially if you teach, it helps the audience or the students to follow your thought process. So to say something like, so in the beginning it seems pretty obvious that it's like this, but then I discovered that, so I changed my assumption, and that's usually I feel better than just saying what the outcome is, and then trying to explain from there.
Makes sense.
Okay, so thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I would like to do a quick summary of today, and then I would love for you to add any last thoughts, talk about the course, maybe you thought of another book, wanted to share. The rest of the time is all yours, but just to quickly recap what we talked about today. We talked about your background, we talked about this system of how we are able to really think deeply, think through ideas for ourselves, and able to internalize it and structure it, enrich them over time through our experiences, empirical knowledge, and have them help you like in this silent transformation, right? Kind of cook up these different ideas, help you find more insights, whether you're a researcher, you're a creator, you are a student, any learner, that this system really helps you have that colleague that is able to have a dialogue with you with all the context that you discovered in the past that you had thought through. And we also talk about how important it is of the simplicity of ideas. And we talk about simplicity of life too, right? Like just being in a park with a partner, that is ultimately, the ultimate form of like success, right? The simplicity and being immersed in that moment. And when you're able to have these lot of simple ideas in first principles, we're able to then rebuild it, reconstruct it, recompose it into new ideas, new products, new articles, new writings. So it's a very, very powerful system. As Nicholas said, one cannot think without writing. And without the system, it's really hard to come up with new ideas.
And I especially love the part we talk about leveraging AI, right? AI is obviously, I'm sure you talk about this a lot too in a lot of places. But something we touched on I really liked is kind of using the system to protect yourself against keeping yourself intellectually honest and doing the, what we call the desired difficulties, such as being at the gym and actually lifting the weights to get the gains. So yeah, I think, after reading the book, I learned a lot about the system. I haven't tried it myself. Had some learnings there as well. But especially talking to you today, I feel like we've gone a little bit deeper in a lot of these new ideas on using AI and how inspiration comes to the prepared mind. I like that part a lot too. So yeah, thank you so much. It was very, very insightful. And I also love how we talked about Western, Eastern philosophy. I wasn't expecting that to be a topic, but I absolutely love that part. And it really shows that how such different ideas in such different contexts can actually be interconnected, linked in so many different ways to help us come up with our own understanding, our own explanation of the world. And not just come up with better answers, but actually find better questions, which is ultimately the more important. So yeah, thank you for everything.
Thank you for having me, for the invitation, and let me extend the thank you to Taiwan, because I feel very welcomed here. And shooting the course here in Taipei it's first of all a great chance to put all the experience of the last 7 years since the book came out into a more hands-on description that, with the help of the team here, I think came out right in a structured way, so people know what they can take from that. And my experience working here is very different to my experience being as a tourist here, and in a very good way, because you get so much more immersed in a country when you work with people, and couldn't have been a better experience. And I really hope that, and I'm certain it does, shine through the outcome of this month studio work we've done here together. Wow. And it works smoothly from day on, except when I throw coffee over myself.
You guys have been working hard on doing this course in Taiwan. I see the agenda of the course, and it's very thorough. I love the part where you target specific people, knowledge workers, researchers, creators, learners. I think that's the nuances that really helps people not just go through the course and able to learn the knowledge that you have in your book, but having very practical ways of leveraging it, implementing it, and making it a habit. I think that's a very powerful thing when you do it with courses. So
yeah, and I'm looking forward, and hopefully can come back after the course launched and gather some feedback, maybe engage in some different form again here in Taipei.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise.
All right.
好，谢谢大家收听这一集全英文的集数。如果大家跟我一样想要用这种让我可以更简单思考的系统去保护自己在 AI 时代的独立思考，那欢迎大家去参考这个线上课程卡片盒笔记思考术，知识个体再进化。那节目栏有连结，也可以用我的优惠码 Jacky Card Jacky 卡片 Jacky Card， 然后可以再折350，欢迎大家参考看看。然后再一次谢谢大家所有淀粉们的支持，然后也再次跟大家分享，我们2月2号是我们第2个月的自我成长进化淀粉计划的第2本书，第1本是 Start with Why， 那我们用了自己客制化的网站跟 APP， 让大家可以有一个更客制化的自我成长的体验跟记录，也在 App 里面可以去找到不同的淀粉去产生连结。我们社群里面也会帮大家在 Discord 里每个月用淀粉咖啡厅报名的淀粉们可以去配对到不同的淀粉，去深度的彼此学习，然后在自我成长路上可以跟其他人有伴。然后大家在这个系统里面做的事情，我们会拿来帮助大家做更好的配对。所以大家都找到兴趣、工作，或是听过相同 podcast、阅读书的淀粉们，如果你们交流起来，一定会有更多的火花。所以，我们现在淀粉计划正如火如荼的进行中。如果你有兴趣，想要2026年想要最大化的自我成长，然后让这一年是你真的人生找到方向，一个你的自我成长的核心指南针。我们常常讲的自我成长指南针，是我自己开发的一个系统。然后我觉得对我来说2019到现在用这个系统对我帮助非常非常大，做了一次之后可以用了好几年，因为它是一个非常核心很深的层的一个东西。 然后会帮大家每个月咖啡店的配对跟每个月讲座之后，帮大家分组去认识不同的淀粉交流。那我们自我成长路上有自我成长指南针的方向，有每个月的书跟线上交流会的养分，那也有淀粉们彼此的伙伴。让我们的自我成长路上像一台车，有 GPS 有油，然后车上有很好的朋友们一起在2026跟人生之后的旅程上都有很美好的陪伴。谢谢你们收听，那我们下次见 ，See you soon， 拜拜。
加入淀粉2-3年了，以前我不太敢就在3个人以上的聚会上面说话，加入以后就是开始愿意在大家面前说话，愿意真的说出自己不喜欢的是什么，然后认识很多的淀粉，想要就是让生活都变得更喜欢的样子的人，觉得是一个很不错的群体。
在跟人相处的时候，我发现我不用再过多的想要去 show off 我自己。加入淀粉大家庭的每个人之后，我发现我其实当一个倾听者，我收获是更多的。然后在每个人的分享当中，我是因为很有兴趣他的议题，然后再丢问题后发现，大家的都很有内涵，水很深，有没有？
我是从2022年的10月加入淀粉的。加入最大的改变就是，我觉得我的说话变得比较慢了，然后脾气变得比较好，应该说比较有包容心这样。
加入淀粉时间大概2个月的时间，然后我觉得因为在淀粉社群会遇到的人都不是过去的生活圈嘛，所以比较不会聚焦在关系啊、连接这些事情上面，反而是会因为议题、兴趣还有想法去结交朋友，然后可以更好的分享这些感受。
我是在疫情的时候，就是2021年的时候加入淀粉，我自己觉得是一个很棒的旅程，因为在这边认识很多好朋友。最大的不同，我觉得是有更多的勇气做自己想做的事情。当我想做什么事的时候，我第一个念头会是说，我要做吗？是我想要的吗？那要我就去做，而不是说，我会不会做不到？
我今年1月才加入，然后我觉得到目前最大的收获就是这里的人都能量很够，然后可以让我想到很多东西，例如之前的咖啡厅交流，然后就跟不同人聊天，然后可以激发自己的很多想法。
我加入淀粉超过了1年，到今年的8月就2年。觉得最大的收获是我开始重视自己的生活步调，然后会开始去调整一些自己的生活作息，然后也开始真的会去想自律这件事情，然后也在这里交到非常多好朋友，所以我很期待下一次的淀粉活动。